Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Card Shop. I'm the big dog, as always. I'm here with my co-host, Mike Fruitman, who's giving a little preview into the glory that is the gold mine of backlogged product in his shop. And we're happy to be joined today by Rich Klein, who currently is a well-doer at COMC, and we'll get into Rich's background in a second. But as always, we don't do political statements on the Card Shop, but I think this is one we can all get behind. I think, if Jeff Spicoli ran for president, I think it'd probably be a hard thing not to punch a digit for his box, and we'll leave it at that. And then we always pick a background to deal with the theme. And if my computer will be nice enough to let me go on and pick my background, we're going to go with something that's near and dear to Mike and I's hearts. However, it's right now it's a little bit of a painful memory, but we'll go there. So I'm going to go from the Western semis last year, the NBA Western Conference semifinals with Portland and the Nuggets, and this is the ill-fated Game 7. So, Rich, that's Mike and I's encounters, and so this is basically where I sit for the games. So apparently we're doing the show.
You got pretty good seats. You got pretty good seats.
Yeah, you have to have good seats to see Mike every game. That's what I've learned. It's kind of a privilege.
I've always wondered, has Mike ever taken advantage of his position as a security guard to scarf up tons of autographs from all the people?
I'm gonna stick Mike. I'm gonna stick him. The one thing that he always wanted to exercise his privilege over was to get James Harden to acknowledge the gloriousness of his beard, and he never has.
I got news for you. James Harden beard is better. It's bigger and it's better. Period. End of sentence. There's no debate.
His is more famous, but I'll stand there on the court. I'm the eunuch on the court during timeouts. So he goes right in front of me, steps on the sticky pad, and he'll never look at me. I'm right there. I mean, I know I'm not 2 points or 3 points, but literally just give me like this. That's all I want. Then I'm legit. Then I'm in.
Yeah, but his is so much better than yours. I mean, come on, man. Let's be honest.
I can't.
Well, let's be real honest. I'm pretty sure James has a full-time team whose job is to manicure and groom that thing, and Mike's whole team is sitting on this camera right now.
Good point.
I can't win in this industry. If my beard's like how it normally is, I get grief from Janice. If my beard's short, then I don't have a good beard. Okay.
Well, I got a better solution. No facial hair.
No.
No, trust me,
Rich. What would your wife say if you had
what would
your wife say if you had no facial hair?
Well, she would start with, "Who are you?" And then, secondly, it would be, "So how big was the bet that you lost?"
Okay, well, so here's the bet you lost. If we would begin the conversation with talking about your beard instead of talking about my background or something. I think that's a great entree into this. I like Sean's beard. Look at it. It's nice. It's short. It's trimmed.
It's an accent, not the entire statement.
His is jealousy.
Oh, yeah. Mine's a turf field for the top. I'm not sure jealousy is the right word. I'm more jealous of Rich's hair, to be honest with you, Mike.
Yeah, just remember, I still have it. And I've hit the big 6-0, and I'm fortunate I still have the hair. I really don't have any bald spots. I mean,
that's awesome.
We all have our issues, but that's one that I'll have my hair until I don't have it. But I'm happy to have hair at the age of 60. It grows too fast too. I have to go every 4 weeks for a haircut.
Yeah. So Rich, I'm gonna kick this off. Before we came on the air, folks, Mike and Rich were trying to figure out where in the hell they met each other. They've clearly known each other for quite a while, and I'm going to let them get through. Mike was nice enough to get Rich to join us this morning to have a conversation about the industry and about COMC and Beckett and all the various experiences he's had. But I want to start with just, where did you guys really acknowledge that?
Well, I'll start with Mike. Mike posted all these hockey cards he had, and I have my standard line. I wish I was close to you so I could use them as donations for my synagogue show. I have the Golden Gate Bridge as a background now for a lot of my things. But if you ever look at when I'm on Hobby Hotline, you see my office. Mm-hmm. My office is full of cards. And every card in this office is a donate. Yeah, it's like Mike's back room, except I can get to my seat. My couch is not covered. And, but Mike and I met because that's how we ended up agreeing to do this. Is Mike says, "Why don't you come on my show instead?" Okay, well, I'll take that trade-off any day of the week. But Mike and I met formally in Dallas when our mutual good friend Bill Sutherland basically got thrust the industry summit upon him with like two months notice and had to throw it together on the fly. And they put it in Dallas. And since I lived in Dallas, I said, by the way, to my higher ups at COMC, hey, it's in Dallas. It might be a good idea if I attend. They agreed with that logic. And that turned out to be, Mike usually made the rounds of we'll call it the card company fun circuit. And that's where we finally formally met. And I think we met a little that day, and I met him formally at Mario's East Side Italian restaurant in Addison, Texas, as part of one of the famous Mike Fruitman dinners.
Hey, Mike, talk a little bit about, you are famous in the industry for your dinners. Every single person that I know that I've met, that I've talked about, that you and I are friends and acquaintances, they talk about your damn dinners is where they know you. So we haven't talked about that yet. Tell people what in the hell those dinners are so they know and we can break the mystery.
So going back in the day, back to when the industry conference used to be in Hawaii, I went in 01 and 03. Every single night there was incredible events. I remember Fleer had the Pink Hotel in Hawaii, and they brought Don Mattingly was there, or Don Mattingly was there before, and then Bobby Knight speaking. And every single night there was an Upper Deck Survivor event. I mean, there were always these incredible events. So when Kevin Isaacson brought the industry summit to Vegas, basically there was no evening programming, which is fine because it's Las Vegas. And I was like, okay, let's all get together. And instead of, look, if it's 5:45 and you need to get a party for 30, a table for 30, it's a little bit on the tough side. So I was like, all right, I'll take care of this. I'll figure it out. Let's all figure out places to go. And, at first it was like 15, 20 people at Rayo's. And then it was like, okay, well, everybody wants to do something. So then it was like 45 people at the Bootlegger off the Strip. I had to coordinate cabs and everything else to it. I had to sign contracts. The thing about Vegas I love, so I'm sorry, side note, derail. But when you bring a dinner for 40 people, you have to sign contracts and you pay more for fewer food options. So it's great. Like if you came in my store and you're like, I want to buy 40 boxes. Okay, well, that's fine. But you can only buy these. And instead of $50, we're going to charge you $58. Oh, and you got a tip too. And there's a service. Anyway, so it was always an opportunity to get everybody together so we'd have something else to look forward to in lieu of the evening programming we used to be used to. So now it's like we were going to go this year. We're going to go to, oh God, what's the hotel that's off the Strip? The Rio. They have a place up top called the Voodoo Cafe, Voodoo Steakhouse. So we were going to do, probably dinner for 20, 30 people up top there. Obviously, we're not doing it. But, it's an opportunity for me to actually get time to meet people who I wouldn't necessarily meet. And one of the fun things about the summit that I've always loved, like the coolest thing, it's not high school. Everybody's just everybody. There's no clique. I mean, if you're Pat Moe from Alaska, you're as cool as anybody else. If you're Alan Nars, you're really annoying, but we'll still go to dinner with you.
But Michael, you are the successor to Alan Nars. You also make every show an event. I mean, there is nobody in this business I consider more of a successor to Alan Nars than you.
That may be the nicest thing I've ever heard. I tried calling him on the way over here this morning. Couldn't get him on the phone. But yeah, he is my guru. He's definitely, Sean, he's another guy we got to get on here. We got to talk to Alan for an hour a little bit.
Because Alan, way back in my Beckett days, and we'll get to a little more of that.
Sure.
But Jim used to have events where we would have company lunches, and it would, and you would just show up. Lunch would be provided, except when Chick-fil-A forgot to deliver one time, and we had to wait till after technically the lunch ended to eat lunch. And Alan Nars was one of our guest speakers one time, and he did one of his he did a mini pack wars for us. And he explained all the various ways he promoted his business, whether he was wanting to promote something he had just bought in a vintage collection, or whether he had new boxes coming in, or whether Pack Wars was coming the next day, or whether, I don't think at that time he had a lot of autograph signings, but let's say an autograph signing. You've done all that. So I want to ask you, out of all the events you've ever had at your store, which one was the most fun? Not the biggest, not the most popular, but for you, the most fun.
The Nicola one had to be pretty fun for your son.
That was awesome. And you know, I'm not the perfect answer, or maybe it is. It was yesterday. We do our monthly pack drawings. We take one pack of each new product, we stick it up on the wall. We had not given it away since pre-COVID. So we had about $1,600 worth of packs. And recently, you know, we usually do it at one time. And man, I'm sorry, Rich, this is your show. I'll try
No,
to.
I want to ask you. I'm happy asking you. I like learning more about you.
The script's getting flipped, Mike.
All right. So yesterday we decided, look, we're going to go outside and do this. I want to, instead of giving everybody the whole day to check it, I want to have a big group of people here. I want to do it later in the day. I want to have the whole world show up. And from 4 until 5, I'm trying to think of the restaurant scene from a movie where they're cooking like for 800 people at once. We had 15 people in line. We had people lined out the door to get product. Every box you buy improves your odds. And finally, I'm like, guys, it's 5:15. I've had people outside for 15 minutes after I was supposed to draw. We got to do this. And I walked outside and I could see the people who were gathered in front of my store straight on. And I looked and there were people to the right of my store. There were people to the left of my store. And I told everybody we're going to meet around the left side. There's a lane of traffic that isn't used. And I looked to my left and then there were more people. We probably had 100 to 150 people outside for a drawing we did yesterday. And if we don't give it away, it's one and done. If we don't give it away, then all the packs remain, which is why we have so many packs on board. We had one of our good supporters of the store win. He was elated, really got into it. And the coolest thing is I don't want to draw. I always have a kid draw if I can. That way nobody goes, oh, you know, you went New York Knicks on me, froze an envelope on the bottom. So we had a kid draw yesterday, and the guy's like, look, I won, but I'm going to take care of you. The guy who wins comes in, and he bought 2 boxes of cards, and he just gave them to the kid as a tip, as a thank you for it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a fresh memory that I wanted to share with Alan, that I'll share with you guys. We've done cooler things. We've had better moments. But here's a guy who won. It doesn't really owe the kid anything. And he's so excited that he wants to take care of him, buy him a few boxes.
That's
so
awesome.
I got a picture of him winning. But my favorite moment of the day is here's this kid who really, I mean, all he did is pick a ticket. And the guy made sure to make sure that he really took care of him. And for me, like, it reminded me, I mean, yeah, well, I looked outside and see 100, 150 people here. That's incredible. Yes, everybody was properly socially distanced. But seeing that, like, seeing somebody who gets it and knows that kid, like, he didn't expect to win the drawing. And you know, all he did is pick a ticket. And the guy made sure to tip him out, basically, for doing it. That, seeing the smile on that kid's face, like, that may not be the best thing that's ever happened, but it's a very fresh memory. And I can't think of anything cooler.
And I think you would bring up an interesting point, and that's why I've always liked the hobby. Many of us are looking to make money. Many of us are looking to collect, but we all have a like interest. And I think that's what I've enjoyed for the 40 plus years I've been in the hobby, the 30 plus years I've been in the working part of the hobby, give or take. And I think that's one of the most important things. I did my first show in 1979. I liked helping people finish sets. Even in 1979, I was carrying stuff in old shoe boxes in those days. That's how we carried stuff in. We didn't have shoe boxes, you know, like the 3-row shoe boxes. We actually used shoe boxes to carry stuff in. And, you know, and that's evolved. But, you know, helping somebody finish a set or helping somebody build their collection, or working with somebody, or helping somebody buy, hey, I want to trade card X for card Y. Or in your case, seeing that the person that's a constant customer of yours helped somebody else and did the right thing for the kid who didn't need anything because he's just there. That's a wonderful gift for all concerned. So that's what I've really enjoyed about the hobby for all these years.
So Rich, tell us, you know, you're hitting on it a little bit, but how did you get started where cards were something that you were gravitating toward? It's way before the career, but you know, you've been with COMC, you've been with Beckett, you were in the mortgage business for a while, you've had a lot of careers, but how did cards start out for you, and how did you get started with it?
Okay, my father was actually, long before I was hatched, a vest pocket stamp and coin dealer.
Yeah.
And I got the collector gene from him. My older brother got no such collector gene.
Right.
And I always collected cards as a kid. I went to the candy store, I'd buy the packs.
Sure.
You know, I played with them, I looked at them. When I was watching TV, 7, 8 years old, and watching Mets games on Channel 9 or Yankee games on Channel 11, I'd have cards set up in the floor. Oh, this is interesting. There's my Horace Clark card, and there's Horace Clark at bat. And it's the only real connection you had to a lot of these players was seeing the cards in those days. This is pre-internet. This is pre-computer. You don't get a lot of photos of people in those days unless you clip them out of the newspapers or the sporting news if you read that. And then I kind of sort of kept collecting. I had a couple of years. We had stores in New Jersey by the mid 70s. I would just go in and buy the set and that would be it.
Right.
I actually was buying sets every year before it became popular in the 80s and 90s and going to the present. And then I just started picking it up about when I was a senior in college. Senior in high school, I'm sorry. And I subscribed to the Trader Speaks and Sports Collectors Digest in 1977. I then subscribed to Baseball Hobby News in 79. I was one of their first subscribers. My dear friend, Matt Silverman, who's no longer with us, was the first subscriber to Baseball Hobby News. But I did a lot of work for Baseball Hobby News in the 80s. And then Jim Beckett was nice enough to hire me for a full-time job, and I moved to Dallas, Texas from New Jersey in 1990. And one of my famous stories about that, in 1986, I am at the old Arlington Stadium. It is old-timers game. I walk out of the National and walk right to the stadium. You literally can do that in Arlington, Texas. There's a hotel, there was the convention center, and there was the ballpark. And literally, it's the same number of steps from the hotel to the convention center, and then from the convention center to the ballpark. And I'm sitting in these seats, and Wanda Marcus had goofed up my order for tickets for the game. She says, "Oh, give him my tickets." So I'm sitting in her tickets, and the sun is blaring down.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 6:30 on a Saturday evening in Arlington, Texas.
In July.
Yes, in July. And if you've never been in the sun with the sun blaring down, I'm literally, every time a vendor walks by, yes, drinking. Yeah, I don't care if it's beer. I don't care if it's soda. I don't care what it is. Boom. I think I spent all my money that day that I took in that day just drinking liquids, just staying hydrated. And I'm swearing, why in the world would anybody ever want to effing move down to Dallas, Texas? 4 years later, I come to the National. The day after the National, Jim Beckett interviews me, I get hired a month later, and I'm going to the one place I swear I would never, ever, ever go to live. And I have not moved from Dallas since in 30 years. I wouldn't go to Denver either. There's too much snow there.
There's not too much snow here. It's a falsehood that people like me make sure everyone hears to keep people from moving here.
Okay, so fair enough. And I worked for Beckett full-time till June of 2007. Then I did some contract work until 2009.
Yep.
And like many other people, I got affected by the Great Recession.
Right.
And then you mentioned the mortgage thing. I got hired by Bank of America in 2010 and worked there in various positions until my job was outsourced in 2016. And I had gotten really good at that last job. I got so good that for the 40-hour week, I was putting in 20 and outdoing everybody else. But that's a different subject. And I mean, they outsourced everybody in the department. I mean, that was a job I could do all sorts of stuff on the side while I was at work. And while I was, one of the things I posted after, that job got outsourced, I started going to networking classes. And networking classes, the wrong word, seminars, meetings, groups. In the DFW area, we have a very strong networking DFW area. We have a person who's gone to the White House a couple times for all the work he's done on that in leading the group. And I posted one day on LinkedIn, while I'm between jobs, if you really want to see how I can multitask, see how I run a show. Well, I had been talking to Tim Getz, the owner of COMC, for many years. The first time I ever met him was at Baltimore in 2010. And I said, by the way, you need to hire me because I guarantee you're going to need stuff with, and I actually said that to his face, you need to hire me. I didn't even, here's my resume. By the way, you need to hire me. 6.5 years later, I get hired. And
well, in the meantime,
we'll double back to that in a second.
You kind of called him out. So yeah, that was great. And they were responsive. And it's interesting because I'm like, wait a minute, he's posting commentary about his sendings to COMC and their feedback, and then they're feeding back. And it was like, That way he wasn't working them. This was a different deal. So that was pretty incredible.
Yeah, but this is before I ever did anything with COMC. Probably you need to hire me. And because I had had all that Beckett experience and they had to deal with Beckett at the time. Right. And the reason I stressed the 6.5 years is Jim swears we had met before, but I didn't think we had. And the time's a little bit different, but I met him officially, as far as I know, in we call it now the apocryphal softball story in Parsippany, New Jersey, where I met him on a softball field as we're both playing softball. I don't think either of us really want to play softball anymore. And 6.5 years later, I'm working for Beckett Publications. I mean, all my life's a circle, as Harry Chapin would say. You know, sunrise to sunset. I'd be both times 6+ years after I meet somebody, then they hire me. It's like, you couldn't have sped this up by 5 years.
But that means, Rich, that means in about 3 years, you're going to be working here.
That's right. Well, I hope in 3 years, hey, I hope to work until, I'm getting to the age where I just want to work until I get Social Security and that's it.
I'll clear out the couch for you. You can just chill out every day.
That would be fine. I would love that job. Actually, the other place I think I'd have just as much fun, except he's probably much neater, is Rob Virus' store.
Yeah, you don't find treasures at Rob's place. You just find things.
Yes. He knows they're all there, but they're not. You know, Mike, it's a new discovery. If you went back in that area that you see behind him for a few minutes, it'd be like Christmas. And it's like,
there's a guy one of the people I do the Hobby Hotline podcast with at times is a nice man by the name of Mike Summer, who's fairly new, but he just basically purchased a store within a store concept. He now is the store within the store. So there are certain parameters of what he can and can't sell. Well, the guy had been buying cards for years and basically sticking them in wherever, storage. So as part of doing that, he also bought 1 million cards. Hearing the story of what he finds going through the 1 million cards in the back room, so to speak, it must be similar to what Mike has in the back room.
I actually sold my back room. I turned it. It's my wax room now. Let's see. So behind those doors, we had millions of cards, and I sold it about 2 years ago. I had to get all my wax off my floor, and it was the best move I made because I got all my wax kind of off the floor. But hearing what came out of that room, all the Giannis's, all the Kawhis, all the I finally said, look. The next time I sold a deal like that, I said, look, you can have it, but I don't want to hear anything that comes out of it.
Yeah, don't tell me what you find.
It's all good.
It's awesome.
Okay.
So Rod, Rich, you obviously have a long history with COMC. Self-disclaimer, I'm a big customer of COMC and love their business model. And I think in any future state of our industry, COMC has an incredibly big place in it, just based upon what Tim has built there. But tell me how you came to be, because you were a customer before you worked for them, even though you had presaged that by saying you wanted to work for them with Tim. But talk to me how you got to COMC and that as a business and what you do with it before you became an employee.
Honestly, I call them lanes. Somebody else calls them silos. Everybody's got cards that they don't have a place for in what they sell. I bring enough stuff to shows with me, but I only want to bring certain types of cards. I like to bring the local cards. I like to bring vintage cards. I like to bring, some of the better players, but I don't want to bring a common gold card, and we'll just call him, and he's not really a pure common, let's say a Tim Salmon Topps gold card.
Yep.
To me, that's the type of card let somebody else try to retail at a show.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to retail that card, I sell it to COMC where I can retail that card, because he's not a big enough name. I'm not going to get $5 or $10 for that card. So I'm not going to bring it to a show unless I put a card like that in a quarter box.
Right.
And and Tim Salmon would probably qualify for my quarter box with the Topps gold, but I don't want to, then he's buried around right now about 60,000 other cards that are just in a quarter box. Here, all cards are a quarter each, go for it. So it was a great way to have certain lanes, to just another way to sell cards. It's just another option.
Yep.
I know you said before we got on the air, you're big in the auction area.
Yeah.
And I want to stress for all the people that say, well, how can COMC run auctions when you guys are falling behind, which, which is a fact, is that the people running the auction really are not involved in the day-to-day stuff of what I do.
That's right.
That we would be exactly where they are with or without them. So the fact that we can continue as a company to generate money, and if you look at things as a business decision, it's a good business decision to keep that going because it's limited manpower for something that helps keep the engine running.
Yep. And it's great exposure. And I can tell you, that I dip my toe first, but just, on both sides, if your time is money, what COMC offers is something that's phenomenal. If your time isn't money, then, by all means, sell your cards at shows only, sell your cards on auction yourself, deal with the non-payment and all that stuff. But COMC offers the ability for people who have other things they can do with their time, to go do that. And it's unparalleled in my opinion about what it offers. That's my kudos. So it's someone who's
with you.
sold.
I'm turning around for a reason. You can't see it, but here's a shoebox. This is a donation box. So I make one. This will take me about 3 minutes to go through. Okay. But I make one quick pass through everything that gets donated.
Yep.
Just to prevent, for two things. One, to prevent, there's a gentleman that helps me by the name of Raymond Jones. And Raymond found a bunch of Hustler magazine cards in one of our donations, like 2025. And we can't for kids. Yeah. We're a family-friendly synagogue. We really can't have those cards in the. So we make sure we pull that out. Right. I also pull out things like I found the other day an '89 Milwaukee Brewers Fleer team set. It's only worth a couple dollars, but that's a prize. So we both make one pass through for things like that. Right. To prevent something that really shouldn't be in, or to get out the really bad condition cards. Right. And also to do that. The other day I found some really rare. There was a young lady I work with. Actually, she was old enough to be my mother, and she passed, but I had worked with both her and her daughter. And I was about to put these 92 scores, and she had worked in the Beckett advertising department in the early 90s. I'm about to put these 92 scores in the donation bin. I said, wait a second, let me take a second look. Well, they weren't 92 score. They were 92 score samples and promos. There are there's one card currently on COMC active, and there's one card currently on eBay active from that set, which tells you how tough they are.
Right.
Somebody would have had a really good run if I didn't take a quick second look. So I'm going to sell those cards for her. Right. We'll probably, and the synagogue will get some, but in good conscience, I cannot let a card that tough go, without compensating the people who donated it.
Sure.
So, Rich, you're bringing up something right now. We haven't touched this yet, but your ability to find a card, your hobby knowledge, like your specific card knowledge, I think it's unparalleled. Your ability to look at a card and determine it and to know like the quirks on it. I mean, a lot of people on a 61 tops and whoever's the variations and who's the errors. I'm guessing you've got that committed to memory. So whereas most people are going through those boxes at the National, you're going to see, oh wait, card 548, it says there the wrong way, or it says traded and he wasn't. So your ability to spot a card like that may be unparalleled.
I thank you. I don't think it's unparalleled, but it's muscle memory, a lot of it at this point. And a lot of it is just going through a lot of cards. I told the story last year for our mutual friend, Joe Davis. And I'm looking through his box, and I find this rare 68 Mike McCormick white letter variation. I've had about 5 of them in my life. It's a tough card. It's not impossible, but it's a tough enough card. And I'm debating, and if it's somebody I don't know, I'm just going to buy the card. But it's Joe. And Joe's a good man. And, he does a lot for his community. He does a lot for his religious community. And I'm sitting there, and I finally realized, I got to tell him. Joe, a card that I'm going to sell for $20, I'm putting for your dollar box, I don't care. A card that I'm going to sell for several hundred, I'm going to tell you about. And we found this card in there. And the end result is we sold it for $300 and we split it. And he actually absorbed the grading fee for me, which was very nice of him. I think as a courtesy for finding finding and telling him the truth. But yes, that's something where most people would have looked through that box and had no idea what that card was. And I looked and I said, oh, that's a good card. One of the episodes I taped recently with Dr. Beckett about first basemen who should be in the Hall of Fame, because we were going to base it off Keith Hernandez and Don Mattingly and people like that.
Todd
There's
Helton.
a fifth. What?
Todd Helton.
Yeah, he gets mentioned too.
He's just not from New York, Mike.
He got mentioned, and Jim mentioned him. I don't think he is personally. I think he got hurt by playing too long in Colorado, but nice guy. I mean, a good player, but just
Didn't hurt Larry Walker.
Larry Walker was a truly great player. He did things in Montreal, before he got to Colorado. But there's a.
You're going to get Mike going, Rich, if you're not careful, because he has a pretty big thing with Todd Helton. Thank God John Elway's not.
Does he have a shrine to Tom? Does he have? I'm not allowed to keep. I was mentioning the other night, I'm not allowed to keep any cards in the living room, except my wife and I got married on Derek Jeter's birthday. So I am allowed to have a little mini shrine in our living room to Derek Sanderson Jeter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can have a similar shrine at home to your favorite Rocky or Avalanche or Denver Nugget or Denver Bronco, however you want. That's fine. I mean, if you want to have a John Elway shrine at your house and your wife approves, I'm all in favor.
First baseman, Jim.
Okay, and so Larry Fritsch always, supposedly this came from Larry Fritsch, where he claimed his 59 Topps Bill White rookie card has a no traded information on the back. So every time I see a 59 Topps Bill White at a show, I'm still looking for that white whale no trade notation on the back, just in case it actually exists. That's one I will buy no matter what, because then I can prove it exists instead of just telling somebody. That's one of those weird cases.
This is an embarrassing question. Is Larry Fritz still alive? I mean, I'm sorry for
Larry
asking.
and Jeff have both passed.
Okay.
The Fritsch cards are still in existence, but it's being run by a different relative now. In fact, they were the sellers of the Fleer case that recently sold for that little bit of money.
Oh, they were the
They were the sellers.
Wow. So where'd they find it?
Probably in one of their warehouses, probably in their back room.
Their Mike's closet.
So, yeah, I know Tom bought it. Who'd he buy it for?
I don't know who he bought it for. To me, whoever you buy it for, you're going to get 36 Jordans. They're going to grade pretty good. It's probably not the worst purchase in the world if the case is good and the cards are in good shape. The cards should all grade 8.5, 9, 10. If you get a bunch of 10s out of that case, assuming you open it, if you close it, it's probably worth even more. But if you open it, you're going to get a bunch of really nice graded cards out of it. And then you just slowly sprinkle them out into the market.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, so Rich, you've kind of hit around, give me what a day is like for you with COMC. I mean, what happens during the day? You've given us some pretty good tidbits, but I'm really curious how that looks.
I'm in an office by myself.
Uh-huh.
We cannot physically distance in this office right now. I work with a nice couple named Stefan and Angela Loeffler. And I basically recommended Stefan to be hired, and he nailed the interview when there was an opening at COMC. And then there was another opening, and I said, Angela, you know what you're doing, send in a resume. And I basically got Angela hired on the spot since she had seen what we were doing, and so she could basically hit the ground running. So, but this office is not big enough right now with the COVID regulations for 3 of us. So they are working from home. I am working in the office. It's 10 minutes from my house, which is wonderful. So I can run up here. And basically, when I started, my job had 3 parts. We have what we call the COMC Nation sends in, fix errors. So I begin each day by looking at what errors I can fix in the data, sometimes, and sometimes it's my mistake, sometimes it's other people's mistakes. Right. We're human beings. And I find stuff as I'm working, and I'll find stuff in the database as I'm working. And then part 2 is I try to ID cards each day, because knowing how hard it is makes it easier to understand why people make mistakes. And then part 3 of my day used to be doing a meticulous step-by-step review of the database. Well, this year it's gotten a little bit. Step 1 and 2 still exist. Step 3 does not exist right now.
Yeah.
And it'll be a while before we get back to step 3.
If
And
you
that's
remember the show the movie Johnny Dangerously, how his mom was doing laundry, and as he would progress on, the room got bigger and bigger with the laundry, and it feels like you're at the end where she can't get the laundry done right now with that
Yes.
third step.
But that's really a simple day, and I usually have some sort of music going on. I usually have a lot of times either old radio air checks or replays of various countdowns. I know that today's listening will include a show called Lafos out of a independent radio station in New York, which is called Lost and Found Oldie Station. And then a person who shares my birthday, Don Candler, the record handler, each Saturday does a countdown of a specific 60s or 70s year. And yesterday he did 1969, and there were a lot of songs I didn't know, so I'm going to go back and listen to that later. And then that's a typical day for me. And I every once in a while I'll have sports on in the background, but it's usually music, usually something more obscure. You know, probably not the type of people Mike's done security for it at the arena. You know, none of this heavy metal stuff that I can't make 3 words out of. Besides, it is the Regis office. I'd probably scare 98% of the people walking by if I played anything like that.
Hey, I don't book them. I just work them. Okay, I just show up. So there you go.
It's a good gig.
Yeah. Sorry, is it mostly on the screen? You're doing most of this. Is it
Yeah,
mostly
almost everything I do is on the screen. Every once in a while, I will send a submission out for somebody, or I'll go and I'll help. I do meet people. I actually, because of what I do and how many people I know, I do meet people. We do have lunch. We do have various meetings. I do help them with what to send in, what not to send in.
Right.
If they know I don't help them, I just make sure their package is ready. Otherwise, I'll help them and I'll say, you know, there are 48 of this card on the site. Don't send this in. There are 3 of this site and there are none cheaper than $6. By all means, send this one. And, you know, things like that, just so they can learn,
Sure.
you know, what's good to send in, what's not good to send in.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
So Rich, what are the last few cards you've bought on COMC?
It's been a while. I really haven't. Usually the stuff I buy are the Topps Heritage buybacks. I buy the buybacks, and I was fortunately the last, not the last national, but the 2 nationals before that, I probably bought 2,500 buybacks at the 2017 and 18 national combined. So I really not chasing buybacks anymore to the same extent because I have now such a backlog of inventory. But in my opinion, those cards are much scarcer than if you have a 69 Topps or a 69 Topps with a buyback stamp, there's nowhere near as many 69 Topps with the buyback stamps as there are 69 Topps. So long term, I think they're a good play too.
One of my favorite package I send off every year, Sean, is to Rich. Every year I've got a deal where I sell Rich a box of Heritage at cost for.
You never cashed my check this year. I'm still upset about that, by the way.
Rich, see behind Mike? That check is somewhere back there.
Here's the problem. I haven't gone to the bank since January.
Okay, well, okay, fair enough. But I want you to know that I really, I sent him the check the next day. and I would remind him every once in a while, you still haven't cashed my check.
Mike doesn't appreciate the difficulty that goes into reconciling a bank account when you have outstanding checks. It can really be frustrating.
It's no frustrating because I don't write in my checkbook. I do all the banking online, online.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
yeah.
so the check shows up, it shows up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's already taken out of your account. It's just when is it going to get there?
But this is one that doesn't get taken out until somebody actually does something with it.
The draft, yep.
All right. Well, it'll be out before December. I know this.
Fair enough.
I just haven't had to go to the bank. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's nothing bad. But I want him. I made sure. He'll tell you. I made sure several times. Did you get my check? Did you get my check? Because it never came out.
I'll appreciate seeing it again in about another month or so.
Fair enough. This is a rough month. I hate to tell you, August is the most expensive month to live in Dallas. Your heating bill goes up.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to know what my the air conditioning bill is the highest. It is actually July was higher than August, but July was actually hotter than August this year. Next month we actually have 10 days coming up in the 80s after this heat
Right.
wave ends. So it's going to be really nice.
See, that's
Rich,
the difference. In Colorado, we don't look that far out on weather. We don't care. It's not going to be that bad.
That's right. All you worry about is when the snowstorm's coming. That's all you care about.
well, Rich, they get that right about a third of the time. So, you know,
Okay.
I can tell you, my sister lives in Houston, and we have a standing rule that I don't visit her between Memorial Day and Labor Day, because you know, when my nephew was in middle school, he had a football game in the summer, and I went to see him, and I think 4 shirts changed by halftime, and then I went and sat in the car in the air conditioning the entire second half to watch the game, and I was like, never again am I coming.
Remember what I told you about going to Arlington Stadium?
Oh yeah,
And the vendors? Yeah. Next.
Yeah.
And I think I stayed. I think I was drinking so much liquid, I was perfectly sober with whatever I was drinking that day. Was not an issue.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So Rich, I talked about not going to the bank for a while. It's in part due to not having to with the current state of the industry. As somebody who's not living and dying on selling wax and buying wax, what are your thoughts? As somebody who's watched this industry for decades, what are your thoughts of the last 6-8 months? What do you think? What do you think?
You know, I got this wrong at the beginning. I thought for sure when we had the shutdown that the hobby would basically, everybody would just try to keep their money together. They were getting $600 a week extra. If they were smart, they would put that money away, because that wasn't going to last forever. And if you had a job, you were going to save money. And as it turned out, the people who have not gotten furloughed or lost their jobs are saving more money than ever before.
Yep.
The higher group of spending are actually the people who got the $600 a week extra on unemployment.
Yeah.
And they were actually spending more money, and it helped create, and that's not the sole reason. I thought for sure we were going to shrivel up a little because everybody's going to save their money instead. And there's no sport, so we're not seeing what anybody's doing on the field or on the court. Instead, the hobby exploded. People weren't saving their money for, as I wrote famously, rice and bean money. They were spending their money on cards, and we had an absolute explosion, which I never expected. I mean, I never expected, everybody's fallen behind. Beckett had been a little bit behind before this. I'm sure they're behind now because the submissions kept coming and they couldn't really be in the office. PSA fell officially, the last I heard, 1.5 million cards behind on an official level.
Right.
This is who knows where they are now. I mean,
right.
I have a good friend of mine who works for PSA, and he was telling me the first thing that Joe Orlando and Steve Sloan discuss every day is what can we do to catch up?
Yeah.
That's their mission number one right now. Forget everything else. We got to catch up. Yeah. They had a virtual hiring fair on Tuesday with 100+ people. Positions. That's a lot of people that you can talk to. We're hiring more people. I came out to COMC for, and I'm going to put it in quotes, an interview in 2014.
Uh-huh.
And COMC is going to hire in the course of 2020 more people than were working in the Redmond office when I went out in 2014. I mean, that's just an astonishing number.
Wow.
I mean, if you want to get hired in the hobby, or if you want to work in the hobby, there's opportunities right now.
Yeah.
It may, so you just have to have some idea or have something. If you want to work in the hobby, do something, because you have to start somewhere, and not everybody's going to start as an executive.
Right. Yeah, and that experience. Look, I've always believed just get in. If you're a high performer and you have talent, getting in is the only thing that has to happen. After that, it's all about you, and the good people will survive. Every now and then, you haven't been here long enough, and you might fall by the wayside. But man, if people are really interested in that, this is the time to dip your toe in and get after it, because this is unprecedented from what I've seen. Mike and I, one of our first podcasts we talked about what this pandemic was going to do, and we kind of sort of got it right, but not to this scale. I mean, we thought it would do good for the hobby, but not like this. This is insane.
No, and there's pent-up enthusiasm. I'm in a politically conservative area. We had a big show last weekend. We had 200+ tables in the room.
Wow.
And there were more people who attended last month, and masks were mandatory, so that really helped, than attended in June. And June was really pent up.
That's great.
So probably drew 1,500 people for 3 days.
That's
And it was
great.
a nice, it's a brand new convention center, very airy, very well designed. The room could have been laid out a little more spaciously, but it wasn't terribly laid out.
Right.
And, but I was really happy to see the preponderance of people wearing masks in that room.
Right. Yeah.
It
So,
was
Rich, are you
not-
going to shows? Are you going to a lot of shows, or going to the ones you can, or trying to avoid travel?
The only shows we have locally are right now the big ones at the convention center, which
Right.
I can walk to from my COMC office.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
literally, I mean, I literally, and you know, I'm going to be honest, I walk to it because it's $12 a day to park there, or $7 a day to park there. And if I can walk to something, even if it's at 90 degrees outside,
Yeah.
and all I have to do is carry it, well, it is a slight incline up the hill. If I can walk instead of spending $7 a day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. It's what's your time worth to you, and that's everyone's got.
well, it's a 10-minute walk. My time is worth that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And walking is always good for all of us, right?
I try to walk every day at the mall that I can. I'm there at 8 in the morning most days. And it's a pretty brisk 3-mile walk. And let me tell you, I could walk without a mask because you're not seeing a lot of people, but I wear the mask out of, respect for the mall's rules. Let me
Right.
tell you, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do a brisk walk for 3 miles with a mask on.
You're right. You're right.
Is that the Galleria Mall?
No, that's the Willow Bend Mall. The
Okay.
Galleria near where we had the industry summit is an
Yeah.
excellent walking. It's also an excellent walking mall. It's straight lines. It's just I can never find my car at that Galleria, so I don't like to go there. So, and it's also not as close and not as convenient. I walk in the Willow Bend Mall, which when it was built about 20 years ago was designed for really upscale shopping, and all the high fiddle stuff. And so I always joke it's the mall that nobody ever goes to. And so it should have been set up like it was set up before all this happened, where it was some high scale but some normal scale.
Yeah.
And it got unpopular. In fact, they were doing really good work there. They were building a movie theater as an attachment. There was an office building, basically like a 4 or 5-story office building next door, where you can literally just walk from the office building to the mall. And they were doing all the right things. They built like a little restaurant section. They were doing all the right things to make it more than a mall, to make it like Mike's store every day, fun.
Yeah.
And that got blown up by the pandemic. And I feel sorry for them because now they've got debt service.
Yeah.
I think the people who own the property have taken them back over.
Mhm.
And there are many stores that have closed and not reopened, including Godiva Chocolates, among others. And, there were a couple stores that went under last year before any of this began. So they had no control over that. And then one of the big stores, the Apple store, moved last year,
Right.
not because they weren't doing business, they were always slammed, but because Collin County was rife for lawsuits for people suing Apple for
Right.
various copyright stuff. And they wanted to get rid of any Collin County presence they had. I mean, it's some of the stupidest stuff. So the store disappeared there for no fault of the malls.
Right.
But that's something in this business. Sometimes things happen beyond your control.
Yeah.
And the pandemic was beyond so many people's
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. So, Rich, you see where we are today. We're kind of at I don't want to call it the peak, because if I'd have called the peak of this, I'd have called it about 8 times in the last 4 months, I think, from an industry perspective. But, completely in light of the fact that, you kind of called it wrong when it started, what do you think is going to happen as restrictions ease and we get into, PSA and Beckett get through their cycle? What do you think is going to happen over the next couple of years in the hobby?
I think we'll stay very strong. And because you've gotten so much new interest in.
Yeah.
And because you've got so much new interest in, as I said, even if only 10% of the people who dabble really stay full time,
I agree.
that's a significant increase to
Yeah.
really helping.
Right.
We've seen already with Project 2020, the explosion and now the calming down. And yet I think if you're going to invest in 2020, Project 2020, this might be the best time to invest in it if you are so doing it, because investing when the market is softening on that is actually maybe a contrarian, but a safer play than when the 100,000 print run of Ken Griffey Jr. came out.
Yeah.
That may have been too much, but if you have a 5,000 print run, we've seen what happened when they began with the 5,000 print run. it could very well happen on a lower level again when the hype's done and all of a sudden, wait a second, this really is scarce.
Yeah. Yeah. Rationality does not come first. It usually comes at the back end of things. And I think, Mike and I've talked about this often is, we're at some pretty high times, but I think when we look back, much like the stock market, it's back to pre-pandemic levels, but it's not at epic levels above. I think much like this, we're going to get back to a point that's better than when we started. It may not be where it is right now, but it's not going to go back to something below where we were walking into the pandemic, because we were in a pretty hot world to begin with.
Well, I'm going to put one caveat on this. We need no strikes in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the caveat. We can't really have a baseball strike that destroys 2021. We can't have a basketball strike. We can't have a hockey lockout. I believe football barely got their bargaining agreement done just before all this began.
Yeah.
So football you're going to have, unfortunately, in some ways, football is great for the hobby, but in some ways there's less football long-term interest unless you're a quarterback.
Right.
For the most part, it's a quarterback or the very best running back or the very best wide receiver. But, your average running back has a 3-4 year career. You can't really build card interest long-term. It's quick. It's literally pump and dump for 90% of these running backs.
Yeah.
And the wide receivers, usually the good ones last a little long, but they don't carry the ball as much. It's not an exciting usually. So it's very rare for the receiver to really carry the market more than a year or two.
And let's be honest, right? Jerry Rice, the best ever, sells for a fraction of what any of the top 15 quarterbacks sell for. So yeah, I fully agree with you on that. It's a quarterback league. That's
it's a quarterback league. So, you got to hope, at least there always seems to be good young quarterbacks coming up. And that's a good thing. But that's it. I mean, not every pack has a quarterback in it.
Yeah. Except for the 18 one, which there's a quarterback in every pack. Now we can argue with the quality of those quarterbacks, but they're with 5 first rounders. I mean, that's a pretty big population, and that was a pretty fertile ground. And then last year, obviously, there were 3 or 4 that were plus minus. But, it depends on the class. And obviously next year with Trevor Lawrence coming out, hopefully, that's, he could end up being a Mahomes type get for people. And that singular chase can drive an entire product line the way it's been going.
Well, at least he'll start the year that way. And the other thing about Trevor Lawrence, he's charismatic.
Yeah, he is.
And being charismatic on the field adds a ton to it.
Absolutely.
I was kidding Mike about the shrine to John Elway earlier, but there's no doubt on the field, John Elway with charisma.
Yeah. And let's be honest, Joe Namath was a good quarterback, but his charismatic nature adds percentages to the value of his stuff because it creates an awareness that you don't get if you're just a performer on the field. I think that's absolutely true.
Right. So with that caveat that the strike, that we don't need a strike.
Yeah.
We don't need a lockout. We need everybody playing. With that caveat, everybody would have forgiven 2020 if there were no sports.
Right.
Because it would have been beyond anybody's, blame, so to speak.
Right.
There's no sports because we're afraid of playing. I mean, in 1919, Hockey Hall of Famer defenseman Joe Hall is one of the people that dies in part 3 of the 1918, what they call Spanish flu pandemic. And there are other hockey players too. He's just the most famous at the time. And as such, he's, legendary that way. He's in the Hall of Fame. Not too many people who played in the 1910s are in the Hall of Fame in hockey.
Rich, I want to ask you to go in a different way here. One of the things I've wanted Tim to do at COMC, because I know he needs another hat, is you bring up grading the backlog at each Beckett and also the backlog at PSA. So I've never gotten a card when I bought from COMC that hasn't been as advertised. If it says it's got a nick or if it says it's got a scratch, the ability for them to scan a card and to convey that information has always been something that's been incredibly spot on. And when I send in a card too, they find things that I didn't necessarily know as well. And fortunately, they've gotten a little bit more lax right now, so not all those cards come back in a quarterly package. So one of the things I've always hoped for, or at least recently hoped for, was that Tim might consider adopting grading. And getting Tim time is really tough to do. But has that ever been a consideration? Is that something we might possibly see or hope for?
That's so far above my pay grade. I think that's a question to bring Tim Getz on to ask him, and not me. Let's be honest. You'll get a much better answer from Tim than
Rich, Mike and I had arranged, because of where my seats are, we'd arranged to have Tim come to a Nuggets game and sit with me. And I'm sure that was one of the topics du jour that Mike would have laid out. And unfortunately, the pandemic mucked all that up. But I'm sure that offer will come out again. And I agree with Mike. There's I think that the concept of grading is a little overhyped when you get to 9.5 versus 10, 9, 8. But I think just the fact that, on COMC, they're saying excellent to near mint, that kind of thing. I like that concept. I think even a 1 to 5 scale where you go, hey, this card's at least a 9, this card's at least a 7.5, whatever. It would be so valuable to people that, even if you don't stand behind the assertion, just asserting it would be helpful to people on the grade.
I'm going to defend grading on one level. And it's that if I see a BVG or BGS 7 or a PSA 7 or an SGC 84 or an SGC 7, I have a reasonably good idea of what that card's going to look like.
Correct.
And as such, and especially with the way the world has switched to internet buying, and to I can post, if I have a graded card I post on eBay.
Agreed.
I can pretty much say that you're going to get what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Are they always right? No, because as I pointed out at the beginning, with correction requests, we all make mistakes. We're all human beings. People make mistakes. So assuming that, and assuming the mistakes are made out of pure making a mistake and not out of somebody doing something wrong on a visceral level, I'm okay with that, because if 99% of the time a BVG 7 or an SGC 7 or 84 or a PSA 7 is a 7, I'm okay with that. Yeah. And if 1% of the time it's a 9 and 1% of the time it's a 6, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's the
average. Because it gives me a reasonable idea of what the card looks like.
And that's the reasonable, Rich. You're 100% right. It's the word reasonable. And the problem we have is a lot of people who are getting into this, they don't understand the concept of reasonable. They think, well, this is the perfection, this is the grade. So a person with a trained eye can make money off of the difference between their eye and the grade and smartness. And people just think that there's Bible to it. And there are PSA, BGS 9s and 8s that are probably better than some of the 9.5s and 9s I've seen. And it's just, it's a relative thing. I think you're right. It's just what's reasonable.
Yes. But as I said, bring Tim on. Tim's a very good podcast host. I know he's a good friend of Mike's. And as such, I think he'd be a very willing guest.
We're working on it.
So yeah, if we had him out here, I was going to try to figure out. Tim's not the smallest person; he's pretty tall, and I'm calling him tall. So I'm trying to figure out how much alcohol it would take to get Tim lit enough to agree to do grading.
Send him to Hawaii, and you'll find out. I understand in Hawaii he's pretty good at that.
Okay. All right.
We'll just go with that. I understand if you send him on vacation, he can be pretty good. You see, I don't drink anymore on the road, so I'm the wrong person. I'm funny enough without drinking.
Good man.
But I do want to point out that he's right about Tim. Tim's 6'7", 6'8", something large like that. And he came to Dallas for the once-a-year meeting. He meets with us once a year. It used to be just me, but now, all three of us. He came out just before the pandemic, and he came out for one of Dr. Jim's dinners, which you didn't come to this year, and I was a little disappointed I didn't get to see you. And he needed something. He came out. He needed something to do for an afternoon. It was Martin Luther King Day. Well, the minor league Texas Legends had a game that afternoon, so I get tickets, and I've been networking, doing networking through the Legends. So I actually texted my contact or emailed him. Hey, my boss is out. He'd love to go to the game. Can you arrange tickets? I said, and by the way, his biggest claim to fame in terms of basketball is Nate Robinson. Yes, that Nate Robinson once dunked on him in a semi-pro game. Nate Robinson, if you've never seen him, is like 5'7", but he won a slam dunk contest. And there was the first time I went to COMC, there's a big thing about the office, how how Tim talks about how Nate Robinson dunked on him. He also collects cards of people who he played basketball against.
So Rich, Mike's about to validate the point that he does take advantage of being accessible to the court, since Nate played for the Nuggets for a minute.
All right. Nate's a heck of a player, by the way. I liked watching him play.
Well, he was a heck of a defensive back too if he'd have chosen to stay in the football path. I mean, that, you know, some people think that he would have had a pretty long career as a DB in the pros, at least as a nickel back.
Yeah.
Because he was pretty impressive at Washington.
The craziest moment I ever had with Nate, we had him in the shop. The craziest moment, I will never forget this. He tore his ACL during a game in Denver. And I think he like bent over and was adjusting his knee. He knew he had done something. And a minute or two later, he sprinted off the court. And I've never seen I've never seen footage of it, but I just remember him like banging out his knee, and then he ran off the court after tearing his ACL. I know it's not like the three slam dunk. He's going to be the only 3-time slam dunk champ ever, by the way. But yeah, I remember him like going off the court. I'm like, oh, okay, he'll be back. And then the next day, they're like, yeah, ACL. I'm like, how did he not writhe around on the ground for 10 minutes? Anyway, sorry.
Well, you know, everybody reacts to pain differently.
Yep, that's exactly right. Some people laugh when they get pain. There's an entire series called Jackass that is all about how people react to pain, and I get much joy out of those expressions.
So Rich, we're at the hour mark.
We can keep going. That's fine. I want to beat Ferris's record at this point.
Well, no, I don't know if there's 8 people still watching this when we're replaying this, but
That's okay.
So not that you're going to switch hats right now. You're obviously set where you're at. But what have you not done in the industry that still would be enticing to you? Again, I know you're not. This is me asking, but like, what have you not done that you think would?
I've not worked for a card company. That would be about the last thing left.
So you should sign off and do a 1 day with Panini, and so you could do, or Topps.
I'll tell you, if I did 1 day in Panini customer service, I'd probably take out what's left of my hair. and understand a lot of what I've done in my life is customer service related, and so I'd probably look at that and say, "You're complaining about this?
Yeah.
You're complaining about this?
Yeah.
I mean, get a life."
So what would you like to do? Like if you could go back.
I lost Mike's mic.
We lost you, Mike.
Oh, dang,
There you
sorry.
go. There you go. You're back.
What would you have liked to have done at a card company? Like
I think I would have liked to have been involved in one product development just from beginning to end. I mean, it's a year-long process from what I hear.
Right.
You know, they just don't throw together and say, we want to do Topps 1, and we're going to begin on October 1st and have it basically ready on November 1st.
Right.
You have to prep who you want in the checklist. You have to try to look ahead. And I'm just using Topps 1 baseball as an example. Who might be a free agent, because you don't want to put people who necessarily are going to be free agents in the first series.
Right.
So you have to look and you have to see, and then you have to get photos, and then you have to see what autographs or relics you want to get.
Mm-hmm.
And, and you have to budget. You basically have to have a budget. It's quite being a project manager, I suspect, is quite a cycle. Yeah. And it's not the easiest thing in the world. And I think the challenge of even doing one product would have been, especially a product like that, would have been very fun. Stadium Club, where you have to use the photos, I think that might be a different type of fun, because Stadium Club's based on everything as much on the photos, and the photos being great. So I don't have the greatest eye for that, so I wouldn't know what would translate well necessarily to cards. So that might not be a perfect thing for me. But I think something like where you're picking the players in the set, then you're looking at what goodies come with it, then what inserts come with it, what parallels you're going to do. Can you bring it in under budget? How much you're going to produce? Make sure your checklist makes sense. One of the things with Topps 1 this year, they did, and this wasn't planned, they did the 1 million card break in AT&T Stadium here in Arlington, Texas. There was one Texas Ranger in Series 1. Well, it wasn't to the public. Yeah, it was kind of weird because they were they ended up with saying, we're going to have special logos for Rangers in Series 2 to honor the new ballpark. Well, they are playing in the new ballpark, but there's no fans there right now.
Right.
So, make sure that you have at least representation from every team. You have 330 cards, you have 30 teams. You have some special cards. You can make sure at least 8, 9 players from each team is in the set. I mean, you have to, think about this. I tell the stories. One year at Beckett, we did a football book. Somehow we forgot all cards from the letter S in the football book. We had to go back and make a special print edition. So for the rest of the time, I did the almanac, and then I later did the almanac when I was there. And one of the things about the almanac, I would literally have out, in terms of my small almanac file, a piece of paper with an alphabet, A, B, C, D, etc. And every time I got the stuff to proof from a letter or whatever, I'd cross off the letter of the alphabet because then I knew I had done it, just to make sure you weren't making that mistake again. And it sounds really silly to have a piece of paper where you have the alphabet, but I had a piece of paper with me where we had the alphabet, just not to miss anymore. And my last year at Beckett, in combining the files that we sent to printing, somehow half the 1963 top set got missing. It was the weirdest thing, because who's going to catch that the 63 top set is missing? Okay, 63 tops. You're not going to look card by card. It's okay. There's a lot of cards. Good enough. So we ended up printing out from the annual book the 63 tops listing, and anybody who complained, we just put in an envelope, these 2 pages, said, here's your 63 tops listing. Enjoy. But even something like that, it all has to do with proofing and learning from your mistakes. So knowing that mistake, you would make sure that you have 8 Texas Rangers in Series 1. You'd also want to make sure, even the obscure teams like the Seattle Mariners right now, you still want 7 or 8 Seattle Mariners. And the reason I'm saying that, you might take 12 Washington Nationals from Series 1 because they had just won the World Series. So maybe you want a little more representation of the World Series winners in Series 1.
Right.
Than the team they played, like the Houston Astros, again, 10 or 12 in Series 1, and have more than that than the Mariners or the Detroit Tigers or the Kansas City Royals, or teams that aren't as popular, but you do want to have that. Those are all challenges you have to think about. There's a lot that goes into that I'm sure you don't think about. And then, Topps one's a little bit different because you're not really worried about the secondary market in that, but some of the higher level product, you want to make sure that there's something that, okay, once these cards hit, is there something that going to get interest on eBay or somewhere else? So I think that would be it. I don't want to be the one negotiating contracts. I don't want to be the one negotiating with the agents. Maybe I'll go and collect the art. Maybe I'll be the one sitting with the players. That wouldn't be a bad job.
Yeah.
I hope they put some interest in value for Series 1. I think I've got 16 cases of jumbo and 16 cases of hobby coming in. So.
Well, I saw a note on Twitter this morning that somebody was asking 1,400 combined, I think, for the 2 cases.
I haven't looked at values yet, but literally, like, one of my favorite things to do every year is when the order form comes out for Topps, and it's like it's so far out. I mean, every order form is so far out, but that one always hits me where it'll be. Well, I've already ordered it, so it came out in, I guess, June, July, and I'm ordering 2021 baseball, and it's such a good feeling. I love it when the product hits. I'm actually more excited the day I order it. It's more of a fun day for me because it reminds me, like, I'm direct with Topps. Like, that's still a rush for me. That's still a big thing. I know they cut down to 250 a number of years ago, but being direct with Topps, it kind of says you made it. That was a big make it day for me. So,
Mike, if you think about what you're talking about here, if you remember back when you were a kid, I was a kid, Rich, I'm sure you remember this, when the JCPenney and Sears Christmas catalogs would come out, the best day ever was going through that Christmas catalog and seeing all the things you wanted, right? That's kind of like what you do with this Topps, with the orders you get for cards. It's awesome. You still get to have those catalogs.
Down here in Dallas, it's the Neiman Marcus catalog.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All the $1 million items that no one can afford unless
ridiculous headliners. Yeah.
I don't know age-wise, but mine was always the Toys R Us catalog when that thing came out. Oh yeah, that was that. I want that. Yeah.
Well, self-admittedly, the JCPenney and Sears catalogs, as a preteen/teen kid, you also had the one section where they would exhibit lingerie and various clothing items for adult women that sometimes that was okay to look at. And you could, I'm looking at this for, whatever reason. So you have a little bit of that there too, but the toys were always spent more time on those, and the NFL football helmets and stuff that were in there.
And just remember, the first ever factory set is a JCPenney factory set in 1974. Topps sold factory sets through JCPenney in 1974.
That's awesome.
So if somebody ever comes into your store with a 74 JCPenney factory set, it exists.
I did not know this. See, Rich, you've got so much product knowledge. You need to literally obviously you've got the podcast, but this all has to be stored. Your industry knowledge. I mean, you and Virus together. I mean, if there's something that's out there that you guys don't know about, I want to hear about it.
You need to be the first person to go on.
If you really want to know what we don't know about, listen to Dr. Jim's podcast.
Okay.
Because he knows things we don't know.
Right.
And it's a blast when I do them, and we have a lot of fun. He'll send me a list of things like, talk about 1977 Topps. And that's all he'll tell me is we're going to talk about 77 Topps. And then whatever it is, whatever we come up with. It's all winged on the spot. Every once in a while I prep, but for the most part, there's no prepping other than, Rich, here's the list of things.
Right.
And so those are fun because I never know what's going to come out of my mouth.
Well, that's how we operate in a very similar way here on a number of circumstances. So we have a one common question we're going to ask, and I want to get it out of the way so I'm sure there'll be a conversation around it. But what's the one collectible item that you've kept personally that you will not part with? It'll be the last thing that goes.
What'll come with me to my grave. There has been one Major League Baseball player from my hometown. His name was Joe Cunningham. His mom was the town librarian. We were in a reasonably small, lower middle class town when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And it was a small town in those days. It's still not a big place. There's no Starbucks that I know of in that city, for example. And about 27 years ago, I sent up my Beckett teammate, Theo Chen, to a Willow Grove show or Fort Washington or wherever it was at the time. Gave him a bunch of Joe Cunningham cards. So you're going to look for a guy named Ernie Montella. You're going to hand him these cards. You're going to give him my address, and he'll know what to do. And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Just trust me on this." Well, Ernie made these special plaques. He would do these frame things and because of Cunningham's career, he had a fairly defined. He's also he played, his baseball cards are 55 to 66. So there's a couple there's a couple TCMA cards later, and he finished second in the 1959 batting race. So he had some career highlights, but he never was a superstar. He's a decent player, maybe slightly average above. One of these smooth fielding, line drive hitting, left-handed first baseman. There used to be a dime a dozen now that they don't exist anymore.
Right.
And Ernie knew me, and Ernie added a few things to make the frame thing really cool. He found an 8x10 autograph photo of Cunningham. There were some Topps little pennants from the 60s he added. He did a couple other things. And Ernie's no longer with us, but Ernie would do a catalog of some of his favorite framed items, and that was always among them. And it's a beautiful piece, and it will be the one thing that gets buried with me. If anything gets buried with me other than my beloved doggy son Tater Tot, it will be that frame.
As a big dog person, I fully subscribe to Tater Tot.
Well, Tater is a wonderful young man. He's a little mini chihuahua, maybe 6 pounds.
Uh-huh.
And the other night when I was doing a podcast and I got home about 11:30 at night, Tater and his younger sister, Charlie Girl, who I call Charlie Chew because she has a habit of chewing things she shouldn't chew, they were waiting up for me in bed so I could take them for a walk at 11:30 at night. I took them for their walk, and then I went to sleep. But Tater was waiting. Tater, I get up in the middle of the night. I go to my office. I'll read. I'll catch up on whatever email I didn't read that day, and then I'll go back to sleep. And Tater will wait up for me until I get back to bed.
Cool.
So, Rich, we also give you, we want to give you time. One of the things we want to give back to our guests is to give them a forum to talk about something that's near and dear to them that they'd like people to know about. And we want to give you a couple minutes to do that, just as an opportunity to share with our audience and other people.
And I'm going to say this, and I want everybody to understand just how important this week was. And I wouldn't mind either of your inputs too on this, but beginning with the Milwaukee Bucks reaction to the incident in Kenosha. I think we saw something very important in sports, how this is very reminiscent of 1968. And I was slightly incorrect of what I said yesterday, because MLB eventually did the right thing and did suspend their opening days, which are always a big thing for Martin Luther King funerals, for his funeral, because that was a moment to bring the country together after he was shot and killed like that. And, if you Google the simple words, racial profiling Milwaukee Bucks, you find two different players that are public stories about being racially profiled with the Milwaukee Bucks. So when what happened in Kenosha happened, it hit home for the Bucks. It hit home in the Bucks the way that none of the three of us can understand.
Right.
And whether we think it was right or wrong, they made a decision. They wanted to stand on what their opinion was the right side of history. And somebody says, well, this will affect their card prices. Well, if you look back in the stories about 1968, a lot of the leaders of hey, we've got to take off from Martin Luther King's funeral. Maury Wills, who might be in the Hall of Fame someday, and his card values are the same, whatever they be. Rusty Staub was the Houston Astros player rep at the time. There were other people too. Roberto Clemente was very involved in that. Certainly nobody doesn't buy Roberto Clemente cards because of that. So being on the right side of history sometimes will not long-term affect your card value. And I bring out the same thing for the people on the right side of the political spectrum. I saw a couple posts on Facebook when Steve Bannon got arrested. About how Kurt Schilling, who was on the board of advisors for that place, was also arrested. Kurt was not arrested. He's on the board of advisors. Don't spew incorrect information on either side. Kurt Schilling's a Hall of Famer. Skipping the political viewpoint, it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of whether you believe in their political viewpoints.
Exactly.
And the bloody sock. Kurt Schilling helped three different teams get much further than they ever should have gotten. The 93 Phillies, the 2001 Diamondbacks, and the 2004 Red Sox. On that level. And he was a dominant pitcher in his day. So on both sides of the political aisle, we have to respect everybody's opinion. And I'm glad that the leagues, for the most part, let the players do what they felt doing, get their emotions out. It was very important on a social level. And on a card level, I will tell you, if you sell their cards, there'll be 5 people ready to buy their cards tomorrow too. So, just understand that the players, this is like 1968 again. The players have a voice. We have to respect their voice.
That's great.
Rich, you had the opportunity to talk about anything you wanted, and I love where you went with it. But I want to make sure you get a point, obviously, to talk about your show and what you do. So I didn't want to have that not be part of what you talked about today.
I appreciate that. But since it was about what I talked about, because it was so fresh in my mind, I wanted to talk about that. We were very lucky this year. I run a show from my local synagogue. I also run other shows, but I'm sort of like that I sort of, when the pandemic, I wasn't going to run shows for the first half of the year for the most part at my hotel that I was using because my wife was gifted with a new kidney last November. And I came very close. I came actually within a week of having to run up to New York and replace her mom with staying with her, which is part of the guidelines, the organization that helped arrange it wanted. They wanted somebody with her, even though she was basically fine by that point. So I didn't want to schedule a show to have to cancel it. But the synagogue show, I run a show for my synagogue, Adat Havarim, in which basically we give back to the community. That was always the premise of the show was to give back. Well, we used to do about 10, 12 door prizes a show. Pretty easy to do. I could run my normal table and then every couple of hours just run 3 or 4 door prizes. Well, Texas state law prohibits nonprofits from having more than 2 raffles a year. Yeah, yes, if you've ever been a nonprofit in Texas, you find that out real quickly. Yes. However, if you're for profit, you can run as many raffles as you want. Mike could run 100 raffles from a card show from his card store and he'd be fine.
Right.
But I can only run 2 as a nonprofit. Bingo is exempted from that. So what we ended up coming up with is our president brotherhood at the time, the president of our brotherhood at the time remembered this Dallas dealer by the name of Myron. Myron was a trivia whiz. He'd wheel in this big TV to the big shows and he'd sell these bags for $1 each. The big prize was the TV, but you'd always get a prize slip in your bag. It might be just a little frame. It might be a team set of some sort. You buy a $90 set, you make 27 team sets or whatever, and all of a sudden you've turned the $10 purchase into something you're getting $27 for. That's pretty good profit. Of course, every once in a while it could backfire. Like there was one show, everybody had a really good show, and somebody goes to Myron, how many bags do you have left? He goes 150, and the TV's still there. Okay, I'll take all your bags. So I'm taking the TV with me. Okay. But one thing we ended up doing because of that memory the person had with Myron, we started doing bags with a prize slip inside. That was totally legal because they've already received something of value for their donation. Then the prize slip is the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae. And so I always have to chase down both cards and prizes. Well, right now I really don't have to chase down a lot of cards. I never turn down a donation, but we have 1.5 million cards in a storage unit and about 500,000 cards in this office.
That's awesome.
I don't have to sort them. I just have to put them into 3,200 count boxes. I do not. I told you I make one.
Well, if you commit to sorting, it's a whole different deal.
Right, sorting would be something else. I make one pass through them, as I told you, just as we discussed, just what not to look for, and then basically they go and then I don't even do when we make the bags. I am not involved in that process. That's something. Because I would look at too many cards. So I don't want to be involved in that part of the process. I'm doing something else. Or I'm frankly saying, I got you the cards, you do the bags.
Know thyself.
Yes. And so we've donated, so to finish one thing, we made sure, it's a good thing we did because we got our March show in, but we're obviously not going to have our normal Labor Day show.
Sure.
We may or may not have a show by the end of the year. We're okay. But we've given back about, in the last 5 years, somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 to community based out of that show.
Good on you. That's great. That's great, Rich. Mike and I, one of the reasons that we get along so well is we both have a pretty profound belief in community and supporting community. It's great to hear other people with that same perspective. Mike obviously has a big thing for kids and kids in the hobby, but more as a reward for what they do in the classroom and other things. And, it's a profound benefit to have people who are committed to community.
Mike, when my good friend Nick Redwine and his wife Debbie owned Nick's before selling it to Dean, he always had what he called good kid reward packs, where if you did something good, here's a bag for you, full cards and a pack or two in that. Or if you brought in a report card basically with straight A's or really good report card, he'd always give you something for all that. I assume you have something similar in your store?
Yeah, we do. We have a kids club. So on top of the class and the other manufacturing support that we get, every month the kids get a little punch card and they bring it in, and we always have something free for them. We were giving away Bronco sunglasses. We were taking cards from a break and repackaging them up. So every month we always have something absolutely free for kids. They don't have to buy anything, just come in the shop.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's the best way to get kids involved. Many years ago when I was on a show trip in Niagara Falls, I went to Dave and Adams before they became a 40,000 square foot store. Now that's something I'd like to go to. This was a smaller store. And I think Beanie Babies were getting hot at the time, or it was something, but they made sure that everybody who walked in, if they bought whatever they were buying, also got a couple, especially the kids got free packs of hockey cards. Yeah. Because hockey was so big in Buffalo. Let's give them hockey packs just so they can have something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's funny because that's, Mike will tell you, I was in the hobby, but I got deep in the hobby because I was visiting his shop, and I would sit in the shop and I'd see people see men and women in their 40s and late 30s and even in the 50s, and they'd have their 8 to 12-year-old kid with them. And I'm like, okay, there's another generation coming. This is not a wasted time to think this hobby has legs and it's going to resonate with another generation. And that really resonated, and Mike's efforts completely support that. I think it's a great and a noble gesture.
And that's great to see. And that's also one reason why in this resurgence, basketball cards have taken off so much.
Yeah.
Because the generation of the 90s, the kids of the 90s were buying basketball more than baseball.
Yep.
So I always call it the 20-year rule or the 25-year rule.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when you come back, what are you coming back to? You come back to what you grew up with.
Yep.
Well, those kids, yeah, some of them grew up with baseball, but a lot of them grew up with basketball.
Yep.
A lot of them grew up with Michael Jordan. A lot of them grew up with Scottie Pippen.
Yep.
A lot of them grew up with Charles Barkley. Okay, well, let's go back to that era and let's make basketball hot again. And that's one reason why, even as great as the new generation is, that's why the new generation of basketball is so hot, is that the previous generation remembers their generation.
I agree. Yeah, it doesn't hurt that China and Eastern Europe have become hotbeds for basketball as well, and those are gigantic buyer markets that really are supporting. But I hope that we don't get to the point where the price and accessibility for kids and those that have it resonate with them gets such that they lose that.
Well, I agree with you, and the old joke about leaving. There's the double-edged sword of retail.
Yeah.
This year, retail's just exploded because some of the card stores couldn't even be open but the retail stores, the big box stores were able to stay open because they had grocery stores in them and they were still getting card.
Right.
And there's the double-edged sword. I tell the story. I went to Walmart a couple weeks ago on National Baseball Card Day because I had to buy, believe it or not, price stickers to put, prices on cards. And I'm in Walmart because I know where it is and I know they're not expensive. I'm going to look at the card section. There were 4 blaster boxes left in the whole store when I got there.
Yeah.
2 were 2020 Score football, which I don't really care about.
Right.
1 was a reduced price of 2019 Heritage, and 1 was 2019 Diamond Kings, or 2020 Diamond Kings. So I bought the 2 baseball boxes.
Yeah.
And that was perfectly fine. And I'm happy with that. But I get the point. If you're a kid, you want to be able to get, and you want to, and not even just a kid, a beginning collector. Having some of the material available is a big help. You don't want it to be so overhyped that you get, wait a second, I paid too much for this and now I'm burned. And it's a very fine line because there's a difference between capitalism and helping the next generation, because if you don't buy it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
This is going to sound really weird, Rich. I'm looking more forward to 21-22 basketball. I'm sorry, 2021 basketball, the 1920 basketball. I just put in orders for hoops and some other things where I know I'm going to be able to offer products at SRP. I know that sounds really weird for a shop to have that philosophy.
No, I think that's a great philosophy. We want to sell stuff at SRP. You've read my articles, which is why you're nice enough to send me the Heritage box each year. But, there were 2 straight years where Heritage went from $74.25 an old triple card to $140 in a week or two. It's like, I waited a week and the next week it's $140. It's like, excuse me? Right. $74, yeah, I'm happy to pay you. $140? Not so much. And I mean, this year, I did, they worked with me a little with my card store. So they lowered on first day the price a little from where it was. And I go, I know it exploded. I saw what it was on Twitter. Yeah, we'll take that a couple dollars for you. The manager was very nice and knocked off a few dollars, and I got your box. Both boxes I got autographs from, so I felt I hit the lottery. But I understood. Heritage this year is like the one product that has not moved in price since it came out, which I'm very blessed and feel very happy about because it's like it's my favorite product each year. And right now it's in the middle of when I was collecting as a kid, so it's always fun for me to see that design. But that's literally the only product that hasn't exploded.
Which I thought was kind of weird because you look at what Gypsy Queen did, and those 2 products and that and Allen and Ginter, I kind of group them. I know everybody groups up Prism, Mosaic, Optic, and Select, but I look at those 3 releases being so similar. And you're right, like Gypsy Queen just went. And at first I was kind of like, oh, wow, great. People are going to still buy. It was when we had the concerns about whether this industry was going to keep going during
Right.
the pandemic, and Gypsy Queen just rolled, and I was thinking, okay, so when is Heritage going to roll? And it never lost, it never went below, but it never had that run that we saw with so many other products.
I think it's because it had the run the last few years, and people realized that this run doesn't work.
Heritage is always one of those interesting products. I know. Here we go. We're going down a wormhole. For years, I kept telling Clay and anybody else at Topps, I'm like, you got to put 2 hits into Heritage. I got to have an autograph, and I got to have a jersey card. And they'd go, well, Mike, is last year's above cost? Yeah, and we really don't. And the next year, I would say the same thing. We got to add content to it, because you look at it's it's a $96 box, it's a $100 box, and anything else that hits in that price range always has 2. And their response would always be, well, how's last year's doing? And they're always right.
Well, one of the things with Heritage is slightly different. Heritage is more like Topps One.
Yes.
In that you're buying it not for the hits. Plus, you have 6 or 8 short prints in the box.
Right.
And that's a big difference. You, in a sense, if you combine 6 or 8 short prints, that is a second hit.
Right.
So I'm a little bit less concerned about a second hit in Heritage when you consider it's really more like a product that the old or the Donruss Leaf Playoff does, where every pack has something.
Yes.
And so since every pack has something, I mean, I'm not talking, every pack has something you can ask at least $1 for usually. Every once in a while there's a stiff in there, but let's say 22 out of 24 packs, there's always something you'll get $1 or more for out of the pack on a retail level. That's pretty good. And then the hits, like, as I said, something better. And sometimes you get a really good hit. And what I've really liked with Heritage on the wormhole is they now put on the back, if it's, the throwback, or if that's wonderful. You don't have to try to look at with a magnifying glass at the small number on the back. You can actually figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, if we could just get Panini to tell us which version of every single parallel things are on the back as well, that would be.
Yes, I agree with you, and I tell them that. And remember, a lot of them are old Beckett people, so I tell them that whenever I see them, how frustrated I am. Not that they're doing that, but they don't tell us what there is, because I can't tell the difference between Purple Passion and Pineapple Princess.
Yeah, they could replace the word prism with that stamp, and it would all be fine. And I'm sure there's production costs, and they'll tell you, hey, what's last year's cost, right? They'll do the same thing that Topps does.
But I'll tell you, Upper Deck and some of their products tells you when it's red allure or yellow.
Yep.
And if and that makes, in terms of my ID work, so much easier.
Yep.
Because I don't have to then try to figure out. I am color deficient, not color blind, but I can be color deficient.
But Panini does it.
Try to sit and figure out through a scan what color it is. They're telling me what it is. It makes my life a lot easier.
Right. I mean, they do it in select. They have Premier, Concourse, Courtside. They do have the ability and the willingness to do it at times. I think it's a very fair point, because you go search, if you're looking for this certain card and it's pink, there's like, you see hyper pink, pink disco. It's like, okay, which one is this? What is this card I'm looking for?
I'm with you on that. And it's very fun. And yet Panini runs focus groups. And their focus, because I've talked to them about this, and their focus groups and I understand why, the concept of all the parallels.
Sure.
Because you feel like you're getting something.
Right.
And
and there's sense. This concept of collecting rainbows, right? This rainbow collecting thing is a real thing. It's like the set of the person versus the set of the cards. And there are people who that's how their motivation works. And it's pretty brilliant to have that kind of availability. You're hitting all different kinds of markets.
One of the things I've gotten from NARS, in addition to throw a party at your store every day, it's the term cost in, value out. So yes, if there's an animal with a certain color, it will, by God, one day be a parallel in Select Optic, Mosaic, or we haven't had the peacock. Why have we not had the peacock back?
When's the lion prism coming out?
I just want the Pineapple Princess to show up. That's all I care about.
Well, Rich, I can tell you, congratulations. You officially have the record.
I was going to say I've shattered anything Rob Veras ever did.
Yeah. And there was a tie between Brian Gray and Veras, so they were both about the same time. So
as you can see, I can go and I can go and I can go. I just do it quieter.
Well, Rich, one of the reasons that you're, I think, successful in this industry is that depth and breadth of knowledge you have, and that shows up when you have conversations like we're having today. So that's, Mike, I didn't know what to expect completely, other than listening to other podcasts and stuff you've been on. But it's it's an enjoyable process. I can tell you
Well, as I
that.
said, I did 2 hours with Jeremy on Wednesday night, so this is my week to yap. What can I tell you?
Wait. So that's only another 18 minutes. We can
We
bang
can
that
do it.
out.
We can do it. We can pass Jeremy. And that one was harder because that one began at 9 o'clock at night, my time. So that was actually harder for me to do. As I told you, I got home at 11:30. That's because I do these from my office because I don't
Oh,
yet have
really?
a mic at home.
So you're not in Sausalito right now. You're not.
I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not part of that Diesel great song from '81, Sausalito Summerlight or whatever they called it. A great single.
I was gonna wait till we got off. So are you on the San Francisco side? Or are you in Salt? Point to what do we got over there on the shoulder there?
I don't know. It's just a photo I found. I liked it, and I said, you know what, that's fine. Because I didn't want people I didn't want everybody always seeing the group of boxes.
That's what people want to see. I did a bike ride across the Golden Gate Bridge, which is awesome. I'm as a card shop owner, I don't like exercise, and I've never liked heights, even though I'm 6'4". So what you see right there, what you have in the background right there, terrifies me because I had a very awkward 30-minute ride or so across that bridge. So I was wondering the whole time. I was going to wait till we got off air, but I was going to try to figure out: are you on the Sausalito side, or are you on the Golden? You don't know.
I don't know, but I will tell you, the Golden Gate Bridge is an interesting bridge. In New York, we had the Tappan Zee Bridge. I believe they tore it down and they've made a new bridge. Well, the Tappan Zee Bridge would start at a certain level and actually it would like be a hill going down and coming back up. So you felt like you were riding right on the water for a while. And I believe in Virginia, there's like an 8-mile bridge / tunnel that you have to go through on your way to Virginia Beach. And I rode that a couple of times. And let me tell you, that's an interesting one to ride too. Because that one you're wondering, oh my. But I don't think I was ever as weird as I was the first and only time I ever drove for a significant time on the Pacific Coast Highway. That was an interesting experience.
You should drive from Miami to the Keys one time. That's a good drive also.
I think I've done that.
That bridge is no joke.
Yes.
We can talk about some of the interesting places I've driven just in New Jersey. New Jersey has hills. Texas is mostly flat until you get to Austin. They call it the hill country for a reason. Dallas is pretty flat.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So no national this year. When is your next show coming up?
My next show, we tentatively scheduled for November for the synagogue, but I suspect we won't have one until March.
Got it.
And I wish, I'd like to have one because that would clear up this office. And then I could take more cards in and go through more cards and have more fun. I do, usually about 30 minutes to an hour after I sign off from work every day, I usually go through a box of cards.
That's your evening beer. That's your evening drink.
That's my evening beer. And then, but I'm not quite as blessed as Jim Beckett, who gets to spend his evening beer going through cards almost on a daily basis in his guest house, i.e. his office. This is where we have the dinners, and his cards he's still going through. He's got quite a few cards still, and he does a couple hours every day.
I love that cards are still fascinating to him. It would have killed me if he got burned out on cards.
Yeah.
Like, your guru, your guy, and you're like, oh, I don't like cards anymore. I did that for years. Like, no, you got to keep doing it.
No, he keeps doing it because A, he enjoys it. B, like me, we have this I know in common for sure. We enjoy we've never seen before. Learned at COMC. And my manager, you talked about my depth of knowledge, but the manager, the guy I actually report to, is probably better at his age than I was at his age. And I say that in all seriousness. Because he's had to learn certain things I never had to learn yet.
Right.
So he had to do more ID work on more various things than I did, and he's better at his age than I was at that same age, which to me is very impressive. I always tell him that. But both of us agree when I see him at the National, and then we do have our monthlies. But I always tell him at the National, the one thing about our job is I thought I knew a heck of a lot before I got here. I see something every single day I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say every single day because it's an absolute, but just about every day, I see something, or I see a note, or I see something I had never seen before or never thought of before. And sometimes it's in the world where I thought I knew. It's like, oh, this is interesting. The other day, we got a correction request on a 54 Bowman Carl Erskine card. It turns out there's a printing variation. Well, there was a note, a specific note. Don't add any more cards to this one specific set, because 54 Bowman has a ton of statistical variations. And that's really what they were saying. So I actually rewrote that to say, if somebody sends a legitimate printing issue, we'll fix it, but no more statistical variations exist other than what we've noted. And it was something about blue loops on the upper left-hand side of the card on Carl Erskine. And I think we had 100 that we've done over the years, and 5 of them have the blue loop. That was something I never noticed before, but it's a legitimate printing issue. And I thought that was kind of cool to find. You know, and there are people who love seeing that stuff like that, and I'm happy to do that. There's all sorts of printing stuff. There was a 59 Topps Vino Valentelli card, or however you pronounce Valentini, or however you pronounce his name, where there was either a colon or no colon between birth date and the actual date of his birth, like birthday 4/21/31. And some of the cards have a colon and some don't have a colon. Well, I don't know if it was ever noted before, but hey, that's a legitimate variation. I didn't know that. In this case, it makes no impact on the value because it was literally a 50-50 split, give or take. You know, it wasn't like 100 were one way and 2 was another. There was enough both where it's not going to have any, but it just adds value and information to anybody looking for the set. Plus, if you had what you thought was a 59 master set with the white and the gray backs and the 4 trade and no trade, oh, you get to add that one too.
So, Rich, on those rare occasions where you get stumped, where you can't, who's your go-to guy?
Who's your Rich?
Yeah.
Well, I told you, I first go to my manager, Charles, and I say, Charles, what the heck is this? Then I'll go, sometimes I don't go, usually I find out through the message boards, some of the key message boards, what they are, and then I go from there. I mean, honestly, I'll ask, and if I don't know, and I'll say, Dr. Beckett once had a card in that stumped us off, and it wasn't one I bought for the company, or wasn't. And so I said, Jim, where'd you get this card from? He goes, it's actually, his name was also this, and this. Oh, okay, we found it. So that was on Jim's account. So I went to Jim on one of his own cards. But I'll go to whatever I have to go to. The word Google is wonderful, and you know, a friend of mine down here, his name is Ted Holden. His seller name is Ork Dulian. He sent us these interesting foreign language cards. I'm going to call them Liebig or whatever. And there are actually 2 different distinct websites that delineates all the cards on the site. The problem is they're all foreign language. They're either Dutch or they're French or they're German. And none of the catalogs are really well. So you have to spend maybe 20 minutes figuring it out. So you do a lot of research. And there's various places we all know about on the staff to do our research. You know, there's a guy named Jeff Allender who does Jeff Allender House of Checklists for non-sports cards. That's a really good resource to check. Junk Wax Gems, if he sends in something, the guy who does the junk wax, I'll ask him, Jackson, I couldn't see what you were talking about. What did you mean on this? And every once in a while, and the last time I did, he goes, Rich, I messed that one up. You were right. There was no difference. I actually got the number wrong, but I knew where he went to. I actually found what he was looking for on the next card number. And I figured it out. But you have to know who the people are to talk to. Everybody's got different skills. This guy I was talking about with the Junk Wax Gem website, he is really good on really obscure stuff from the overproduced era. You know, what we call the junk wax era, I call the overproduced era. He's an example. Just guy Jeff Allender is another example. There are tons of places out there if you know where you're looking.
Yeah. Hey, Rich, I think Mike calls it the affordable wax era now.
I think I like that. I will tell you that one of the other.
Well, it used to be called that.
One of the other things that the affordable wax era used to have a very nice, steady price range.
Yeah.
$3 wholesale, $5 at shows, $10 at stores. Yeah. 88 Topps. That was pretty much standard. Maybe Mike was 15, but And
these are my friends.
these are your friends, yes. But it was a pretty standard market. It was $3 load. If you got a lot from, somebody who had a storage unit, you paid them $3 a box. It was wonderful. Somebody who would be selling the boxes at $3 or $5 a piece in the past, he has a table or a booth set up at what they call the Canton First Monday Flea Market. And he always was selling the boxes $3, $5, $6 a piece. Somebody came to his table or his booth at the last one in Canton to begin August. Oh, I'll give you $12 a box for everything you've got. I don't care what you have them marked at. The ones under even $10. I think he sold them some. They may have been marked 15 or 20 as part of the whole thing, just to say thank you for buying them all. Even though he had them marked at 3, the guy paid him 12. The affordable wax era has just also really exploded too.
Yep.
I sold a box of 91 Fleer baseball yesterday, and he's got 36 packs of fun, and I don't have to look at the yellow, so it's the best thing.
There's a guy on Twitter whose thing is pumping up 91 Fleer just because of how he liked the yellow, and I'm thinking, my God, can't think of a card company that had a worse year with their base products than 91 Fleer. I don't like, football was overproduced and boring. Basketball wasn't much better, and baseball with that hideous yellow. Ugh, it's a good thing they didn't do hockey that year.
I'm going to ruin 91 Fleer for everybody who hasn't been ruined for it, but I had a dog, and when it would get sick, it would produce something of a yellow color that's really closely resembled 1991 Fleer. Unfortunately, it didn't get sick very often, but every time I see 1991 Fleer, I think of my dog not having a very good intestinal time. And that's sorry. I may have just encapsulated what 1991 Fleer basically is.
I think you did perfect on how hideous the borders are in 91 Fleer.
Well, sadly, you guys, we can talk about 2020 being the yellow Fleer year for society as a whole. So I think it all comes full circle when we talk about our current status. This is the yellow Fleer year. Everything comes around.
Okay, so what else was on your list of things to talk about?
We covered them and more, Rich, and you've set the bar where no one can.
I set the mark. Brian Gray's got a big way to go and next time you have Brian Gray on, he can do 2 hours easily.
Well, I had to go to dinner that night. I had dinner plans that got canceled, and during the podcast, I'm on here like summing back to people that, yeah, okay, fine, dinner's on. And I'm trying to convey the shot. I'm like, X day, bail.
And Brian was on it, and Brian did a great job. Brian has some views of the world, and he's not afraid of sharing. Rich, you're similar in a lot of ways with this, and that's the enjoying part, because the gift that people like you, people like Jim give is by sharing your history and what you've gone through. You're giving people a taste of that. And there's going to be someone that hears something that's going to go try to do the same thing. And that's how this stuff carries on. And that's important to us. So I appreciate that.
I'll leave you with this story then.
Okay.
A couple of years ago at the National, each year for the dealer selection thing, there'd be a breakfast after, as part of the whole thing. Technically, only the dealers are allowed in that room for breakfast. They let me in, because they figure I'm more of a dealer than I am a corporate anyway. Me, corporate, come on. I exude corporate. Yeah, sure.
No, Rich,
because I did my first show. I did my first national in '83 as a dealer. So yeah. And I'm sitting at this breakfast table, and I'm sitting with my old friends John Ramirez and B.A. Murray, and we're just trading stories. They're adding stories from the '70s. I'm adding '80s. We're just telling the stories. And there were some dealers from the late '80s, early '90s, who got into the late '80s or early '90s at the table. Lou Brown specifically, but a couple other people. And they're hearing us tell these stories about what we did in the '70s and '80s. And they're listening. And they go, these are great stories. Mm-hmm. And we're passing them down. And I just appreciated the fact that I was getting breakfast free courtesy of the National.
Right.
And, that's what we were doing. And, so I would have a little half of a pastry and then the coffee, which is what I really needed there. But we're telling the stories. And that, Mike talked about his dinner that he does as part of the summits and all that. That's the one thing the National can't
Yes.
get back right now that I'd like it to try to get back a little, where we used to have hospitality rooms, we used to have dinners, we used to have things to do as a group, and that's something that's missing in today's hobby. We don't have that as much.
Mhm.
And as such, that's one of the parts of the hobby that I think
Yeah.
we will never get it back, but it would have been
Yeah.
nice to have kept it in some ways. And that's where Mike's dinners are so important. That's a way of keeping it.
Yeah.
Like that dinner you had when we went to the casino as part of the industry summit, where it took forever for everybody to get served. I had dinner with a friend of mine. We got served perfectly fine because we went somewhere else. But it's still a memory that you all can talk about. I'm sure you had great hobby conversation while you were waiting an extra hour for your dinner to arrive.
Well, we did it. We did it last year at the National, where I set up morning meetings. And one morning, they were incredibly gracious with their time. We had DJ one morning from Panini, Kevin O'Neill from Topps, and we had Chris Carlin. And I basically invited 10 card shop owners. I wanted to keep it so everybody could participate. Nobody was on the sidelines. And we put that together, and we got done. And there was like, well, we've never done this before. And I'm like, this is an opportunity to get together with these guys. It's rare to get them on the phone. It's even more rare to get them in person. So that was something I was hoping to continue this year, and next year we'll do it again.
Next year. Chicago's a great venue for that. And I just want to, since you mentioned Chris Carlin, we all want to wish Chris well. I don't know if you all saw, but Chris's brother is in probably near the final stages of needing 24-hour care. He has Lou Gehrig's disease. I cannot pronounce the word. It's a horrible thing. I know many years ago I talked earlier about Dr. Beckett's, company lunches he had. We had Charlie Wiedemeyer speak at one of those lunches. Now, if you remember Charlie Wiedemeyer, he was the football coach who got diagnosed with ALS, became famous. He did the final year as a coach, when he was beginning to battle it, got national publicity.
Yeah.
His brother Herm Wiedemeyer is on a famed 48-52 exhibit football card. And by the way, Herm always had a more expensive than you think he should, because he also had a supporting role on Hawaii Five-0 for all those years. So it's a famous family. But, seeing how strong Charlie was, how strong he was emotionally, he had great support from his wife, but how physically weak he was is something that's always a memory. So having seen that from that experience, what John Carlin is going through is something, it's quite a battle. And, and I know the day that he announced that on Facebook, a bunch of us did a video for him the next day just to help him feel better. I know I promoted the GoFundMe for him because we are also a hobby family.
Yep.
And as a hobby family, you don't always agree with what everybody does, but we're still a family, and you help somebody when they need it.
Sean, once this gets posted, and Rich, I'm glad you brought that up. Once you get this posted, Sean, I'm going to send you a link to the GoFundMe.
Please.
So if anybody,
I'll put it on there. There, and I'll advertise it when we share out. That's important. We'll do that.
So why don't we leave it with the fact that we're a hobby family, sometimes dysfunctional, but still a hobby family.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rich, I can't thank you enough for being on today. This, there's the hobby side and the humanistic side, and having not known you till today, I'm incredibly grateful to have the history that I don't have added to what I'm trying to accumulate and share with the people that listen in. So I appreciate your time greatly.
I'm glad to help you. I'm glad I had fun. I shattered the 80 minutes around.
You shattered it.
You didn't think was possible.
So Rich, next time you want to get on a plane, I just realized how many Southwest miles I have to burn. Not that I'm traveling as much. The next time you want to pop on a plane and you want to spend an afternoon or a whole day running through the back room here, I cordially invite you. I'll fly you out. I'll put you up.
Dinner's on me.
Actually, and Michael's had COMC in his store.
Yeah.
So maybe on one of those occasions, I'll come out and I'll be the one hiding in the back looking for stuff for you to send in.
Hey, I got to get Jeff back out here. Those are awesome days. It's so much fun having Jeff here. Sorry, I know I'm going to sound like a plug for COMC, and I did this a bunch of years ago at a top seminar. Nars like, what do you want to talk about, COMC? He's like, what's a COMC? I'm like, you're going to know about this. That company, like A to Z, there's not a single person there who's not a delight to talk to, who doesn't have like hobby love. And I know I don't talk to necessarily everybody who's pulling the cards and inputting the cards there, but the all-star team that they have put together it's just great people. I mean, every single person, Julia, every single person, Tim, from top down. I'm very glad to have partnered with them for all these years. I ran a sale yesterday, and I'm always up till my 2 in the morning. That's my cue to go to bed. Is I get my subscriber notice who left me, who found me for emails, and then I get my 2 a.m. notification to sales. It's like, all right, now I can go to bed. But that company from A to Z is just an incredible company to work with. And if anybody hasn't worked with them before, they're the easiest to send to. It's the old Ron Pope set it and forget it thing. And you just send them cards. They do all the work. I mean, literally, literally nothing could be easier in working with them. So I'm so glad I partnered with them early on, and I need to use them more.
Yeah, Rich, just to
appreciate
compound on that briefly, as someone else who, I have a relationship with a guy named James Shin who has the auction side, but he also is my relationship person. And I can tell you that if people want to bust Mike and I's chops for being, sucking up to COMC, they can do that because it's valid and it's for good reason. I've sent other people to COMC, and they now are like loyalists beyond belief because they've seen the value and what it does with regard to time and effort. So, you're one of those guys, you're working for COMC, and it's like when you meet your friends out and they go, I just went to work for Nike, or I just went to work for Apple, and they go, ooh, cool. In our industry, I think working for COMC has some of those attributes to it. And I think it's to you guys is all credit what you've built and perpetuate there. It's a great business model for our industry.
I don't think I can add anything more to that.
So with that, we are going to wrap up the show. Rich, I appreciate greatly you joining us. Everybody, take a look. The link will be with the site posting about the fundraising efforts, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.